Welcome
All right.
everyone to our special live session on women in leadership. I'm Rahima Wasti, your host for today, and with me I'm having founder of Landcredit, that is Philip Cutting. Today we'll celebrate the role of women in leadership positions, will share inspiring stories for them, and discuss strategies for overcoming challenges in male-dominant industries. Philip, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, dear. And it's a pleasure to be here discussing this topic.
Let's start with a historic overview, Philip. How has the role of women in leadership evolved around the years?
Okay, so that's a great question. Historically, women are often excluded from leadership roles due to social norms, systematic barriers, or
Mhm. Yes.
nature, let's call it, right? So, however, the in the past century, we've significantly um, made a lot of progress in integrating women into, voting, into politics, into business, into appreciating them in a more significant way in the community abroad. So
Absolutely.
it's an exciting time, and we have women to like Eleanor Roosevelt, Margaret Thatcher, um, and, and the likes, right? So we even have, and we'll talk more about her later. Mary Beria, and so on. So we have a lot of women to thank for not just being alive, but also for the beautiful world that we have around us.
Definitely. Yes. That's one thing. And speaking of inspiring women, Philip, it is really inspiring to see how far we have come. And I'd add that today we have leaders like Angela Markey and other people, who continue to challenge and change the narrative of this thing. Speaking of inspiring women, can you share some success stories of female leaders who have made a significant impact on society or in our industry?
Okay, absolutely terrific. So I already mentioned Mary Barra, right? How can we ignore
Yeah.
her? General Motors. She's the first woman to lead a major global automaker, and has been instrumental in driving that company forward and focuses on innovation and sustainability. Other inspiring leaders, such as Ursula Burns, who became the first Black woman CEO of a Fortune 500 company, Xerox. And her journey went from intern all the way through CEO. And this is a
Yeah.
testament to her resilience, to her leadership, and to showcase that she was able to do this without be handed a title, right? So we have beautiful examples of women that have earned their way up the ranks, really contributed to the world in not just the traditional norms that we expect out of our women, but also in corporate and professional ways also.
Yes, absolutely. That is correct. And there are some more fantastic examples. I'd also like to add uh, Indra Nooyi, I guess, the former CEO of Pepsi, and her strategic vision and leadership significantly transformed the company and left a lasting legacy. And we drink Pepsi, we do everything that they made us for. And we are going to lead to the next question, that is the challenges that we face in our daily life. What are some of the most common obstacles for women that they face in leadership roles? What's your take on that as you see those more often?
So this is complex, right? And let's just look at on the face, women face some initial challenges. And some of
Mhm.
those include just gender bias, lack of representation, work life balance, and to name a few, right? So there's also the double bind dilemma, where it's hard
Mhm.
for a woman leader to be perceived as not too soft or not too aggressive, and to find that window that works for them. Uh, because
Exactly.
Margaret Thatcher, an exceptional exception there, but for many women, if we had like Steve Jobs, for example, they'd have a hard time raising themselves up upon the ranks, and people would make some pretty significant assumptions about their placement rather than their talents. So there's a lot of challenges that women face, and these go further into the roles of supporter and the base for the family that women also have to deal with also. So I think it's they have a lot facing them, and we have to and myself as a man, when I'm dealing with women, right? It sounds terrible, but when I'm dealing or working with women, I have to be considerate that not only is their perspective critical for us, but these
Mhm.
are our mothers, our wives, our daughters, and our sisters, right? So we have to look at how to support them in really meaningful ways.
Absolutely, that is something that I would definitely agree on to, and definitely we've all experienced something like that on the day-to-day basis. It can be difficult to navigate these biases, but awareness and perseverance are the key to overcoming them. And moving on to the strategies, there are some certain strategies that we should adapt. And what advice would you give to women to overcome these obstacles?
Okay, terrific. So similar, some of my advice is similar to what I'd recommend anybody, men and
Mhm.
girl, right? And we'll get into
Yes.
some more specific for women. But you want to start by building a strong network of supporters,
All
both
right.
inside and outside your organization, and seek out
Definitely.
mentors and sponsors who can advocate for you. These are general
Mhm.
rules of power, right? And a woman shouldn't be afraid to develop a power base behind her, right?
Mhm.
This is the purpose of family in a lot of ways, and God gave us this blueprint, right? So also we want to um, we want to enable those that are behind you to support and advocate for you. So open communications with these mentors and masterminds to brainstorm, to share your experience and frustrations, and to both support and get supported. It's a two-way street, and I think it's more important for women to dive deep into these, especially masterminds. And you want to keep honing your and to stay informed and abreast
Exactly.
upon industry trends, right? So,
Mhm.
and lastly, I think you want to be authentic and true to yourself. And this means embracing what makes you a woman, what
Yes.
nature has gifted you, and I don't just mean sex, right? To realize that you have a nurturing environment, that you are also a creator of life, and that these are natural cycles that you have to plan into your life. And you should be somewhat vocal about this natural cycle so that your husband supports you, your bosses support you, the community supports you. Because keep in mind, right? And we men have to keep this in mind, right? As we grow into leaders also and fathers, women don't do well locked up, right? They're social creatures. They're in some ways sensitive,
Absolutely
in
good.
some ways stronger than us, right? If a guy ever had a kidney stone, he can appreciate what I'm saying, right? So re- create those opportunities for the women around you. As a man, you should be creating those opportunities for the women around you, because it could be your wife next that is having to represent what a strong family is, to give that creativity and strength to your children, right? Or to the grandchildren, or to your neighbors' children. So they don't put them in a case where they're having children, for example, if they're in this stage of their life and they are excluded. Make sure that you're continuing to help them develop, grow, but without putting the stress on them that they can't take some time and focus on the children. And don't feel like this is taking the value away from them. This is adding value to the women in your life, men, right? So, and women, realize this also: when you have children, right? Look for that support. If you're in that stage of your life, look for that support to continue growth, but also to get that support to help be that nurturing, loving mother and wife, so that this gets passed on to your children and sons. Watch and respect your mothers and the women around you. So this is a longer tangent. I'm not going to run into how to treat women in general, but it falls along those lines. I want to keep this towards women in profession. So men, keep this in mind, that sooner or later you should be grow into elders. Women also, right? It's a pair matching, and understand there's different roles.
And definitely, you're absolutely correct about the fact that women are blessed with femininity, and that is something that we are gifted with. And yeah,
Absolutely.
if we won't stay in that, so we're gonna just disturb the balance somehow. So that's one something that we need to agree upon, and that was definitely an excellent advice from you, Philip. Women should also advocate for themselves and not to be afraid to negotiate for what they deserve. Certainly, they do
Absolutely. Learn
deserve
how
more.
to negotiate with men, how to fight back, right? I don't mean punching, but how to push
Yeah,
back, right? Men don't
yeah,
mind it. And if the man does mind it, then he's a little bit adolescent and you probably don't need to be dealing with it, right?
yeah,
So
absolutely.
find those organizations that are going to support you. They're out there, believe me. In my organizations, I'm looking for
Mhm.
strong women. I don't want them in my office, right? But I want them in my business, right? So,
Definitely.
um, and the reason I don't want them in my office, right, is because I like to keep that safe environment for women where they don't feel like they have to perform in front of me, where they don't feel like it's one on one, right?
Mhm.
We have to understand that men have their own way of communicating, right? And there has to be kind of this um, meshing of cultures and expectations between those. So I generally try to keep the women around me safe from being in a single space without the support of other people around. And that's what I
That's
mean by I don't want them in my office, right? Because I have just by myself. They'd be bored and lonely.
so, yeah, that was absolutely beautiful. Let's delve deeper into mentorship and sponsorship. How crucial are these elements in advancing women in leadership roles?
Okay, I can't think of anything that is more critical.
Mhm.
The We've in America, we've really suffered from the Me Too movement in the past couple decades,
Yeah.
where women have been a been weaponized in a certain way that's caused them to be segregated from mentorship from men, direct mentorship from men. Uh,
Right.
just as I said, I don't want a single woman in my office with me when I'm alone, right? When I'm alone. This is a consequence of this Me Too movement. But it's also a consequence of there being differences between men and women and how to protect them, right? So what you want to do is look for those mentorships, and a lot of times because the culture we have, they're going to have to look for mentorship between other women, which is often hard to do in the States. Europe, I think, is a little bit easier, right? It's a little less conservative in a lot of ways. So but in America, my best advice is to find mind, and every big city has them, right? And if the
Mhm.
city you're in
Yes.
doesn't have one, consider starting one up. One up. Go on Meetup. Just find a place you can meet and set that up for once a week, once a month, right? Something like that.
Right.
And with other women uh, of caliber, right? And here's how I like to recommend mentors, right? If
Mhm.
Find somebody who's one or two steps ahead of you and get with them and learn from them, right? They're close
Mhm.
enough to
Right.
you where you can learn from them in meaningful ways, but not so far ahead of you that they can't remember the difference and you could never catch up, right? So, for
That's
example,
absolutely.
sometimes I have young developers say, "Hey, Phil, I want to mentor under you, right? I want to work for you." And I'm like, okay, look, I would love to mentor you, but there's too much of a gap between us. You wouldn't provide me any value, right? You're probably just going to get in my way. And the gap between us is such that you're not going to get real value that's going to accelerate your growth. I would want to put them with one of my tech leads or one of my developers, even depending on where they work, to help them get caught up and to help them learn the next stages. And I encourage a path for them, right? So look at your professional path and find some mentors in that also. And if you can, join a mastermind that is also mixed with men that are more senior, right? Because then you get to see a couple steps ahead and to be part of that environment and get to hear from men that are more mature and that are in the particular where they can share those guidance with you, right? So, for example, one thing that other men can do with me at any stage is have a coffee with me and meet one on one, right? Nobody's going to see another guy with me and say, "Hey, are these two flirting? Is there, this guy's married? Why is he talking with that girl?" Right?
Right.
It doesn't happen. But as soon as you're like one on one with a woman, that starts happening, right? So, women, keep in
Yeah.
mind that you also have this reputation that you have to protect for
Absolutely.
yourselves and what people are going to say. It's less common, probably, for a much younger woman and a much older man to kind of have that impression, right?
Mhm.
Especially if they're positioned well and publicly enough. But it's
Right.
still kind of very hazardous for the man to be in that position. And for the woman also, it can be very uncomfortable. So uh, for women to know that is important, and for men to also know that, and to engineer for each other a way to communicate. And I think that one of the easiest ways to do that is through some of the mastermind groups that are publicly open to the public. But I really want the women to focus on finding women-based organizations because they have experiences and needs that, as sensitive as I can try to be to their challenges, I'm not going to be. Right? I just can't understand women, despite being married for 20 years. Right? Um, no matter how great I think I am about that. So find those one-on-ones with other women, 1 2 steps ahead. It's going to be the fastest way to grow. Be aggressive about it.
Yes, absolutely. I've had the privilege of having great mentors and sponsors throughout my career. They've been instrumental in my growth and success. For anyone listening, I highly recommend seeking out these relationships and work-life balance. We're going to talk about this now. Philip, what's your take about work-life balance? That is also another major topic. How can a female leader manage this balance effectively?
Oh, such a good question, right? Um, we all struggle with this, right? And the for men, it's to work enough to support the family, but not to be
Exactly.
too distant, right? For women, they have these challenges because in almost every culture, they're expected to be the care provider for elder family members, for their children, to take care of most of the house maintenance, right?
Yeah,
Daily care, and they're expected to, in a marriage, to be a woman, be fill that role and support for the
definitely.
husband. So we have to make sure that we're sensitive to those needs, right? And work communicate on how to set boundaries, right? How to work within those boundaries and our comforts. And
Mhm.
sometimes even just that communication is enough to get through it, right? Time management is key. And here's one thing I find that women struggle with a lot of time, men too, right? But especially women, is delegating out tasks that they feel are their role, right? So
Yeah,
this could be laundry, dishes, normal stuff, right? And I say I want to give this same advice to men, but especially to women, is consider a housekeeper once or twice a week. Consider delegating out the task of food preparation. Maybe you'll cook yourself, but there's a lot of time savings to preparation, right? If you are in the throw of trying to grow your career, you can do simple things like preparing meals ahead of time once a week. You can do that with your partner, and that can, if you're married, right, you can do that together. Now, if you're a single woman, a lot of my advice on this section isn't going to be any more useful or for you than anything, just doing what you're regular doing. But this really applies to women that are in a family supportive role, or that have in a care provider role. So I think communication is probably the biggest criteria for getting through this work-life balance, and just trying to find shortcuts. They're going to support you without demeaning you, and without over kind of extending your comfort zone, and just find that balance. For example, I wish I could have my wife allow a maid to come in. She won't do it, right? She just won't let somebody in the house. Okay, cool. I go, baby, what's the next thing I can do to help you out? Right? She doesn't let me do the dishes, I guess, because I break things or I get water everywhere, or whatever. She doesn't let me. Sometimes she'll let me cook, but I make a little bit of a mess, and so she doesn't like that too much, right? So that's not more, even though I think it's more helpful, right? Somehow I destroy the laundry anytime I touch it. But there's other things that I can do to help her, and I do. And it's taken me a long time, probably way longer than it should have, to help find those things that are within her comfort zone, but also supportive. So communicate, be creative, and men, a lot of my advice is going to be to the men to just listen to the poor woman, and don't try to enforce what you think is going to be helpful for her, but to allow her to develop that with your support of creativity. But she knows where her comfort zone is, and just try to listen to that. Women, don't be afraid to say it over and over and over. We've come to the point in the relationship with my wife after 20 years where she says, I want you to take out trash right now. Baby, I'm between the lines. And what I'm feeling is you'd like me to get rid of the trash for you in the next 5-10 minutes. She's close enough.
All right.
Right. Jokes. But guys, we have to kind of get used to reading between the lines. And women, you have to point it out to us, because sometimes what we hear is totally different than what you think we hear.
Yes, everybody have their own strengths, and definitely we need to own our own strengths and our unique skills. Everybody has that. So I find that scheduling dedicated personal time and being present in the moment, whether at work or home, as you said, helps me manage this balance. And we're going to lead on to the next question, and that is about leadership styles. Let's talk about leadership styles. What are some effective leadership styles that women can adopt?
Okay, so obviously leadership is a one-size-fits-all scenario, right? I know that my law with a hammer is going to fix all situations. Well, no, right? So unfortunately, leadership is not one size fits all, right? You can't have one tool in your toolkit, and not everything is a nail. So consider whatever method of leadership. It's going to start with communication.
Yes.
And you have to, some people call it transformational leadership, right? Which, in essence, focuses on inspiring and motivating teams, right? But I don't know if transformation leadership is the exact term I'm looking for, because what I'm looking for is something between inspiring those around you, maximizing your talents, delegation, right, and making sure that you have a culture fit that makes sense and values your talents and your nature.
Okay.
Right? It's not one size fits, one shoe size fits everybody. It's
Definitely.
also finding the right environment that's healthy for you.
Absolutely.
And because, some roles, I look at my mother-in-law, right? This girl is an engineer. This lady is an engineer. She understands how to create machines, how to manage them, how to design them, right? Just an amazing talent. And her leadership style has come in through being competitive with men in some roles and being nurturing in other
Mhm.
roles. So she
Yeah.
continually rebuilds herself still uh, at her age. Like I'm old, right? So I'm not going to say she's old, but she's got some experience and a lot of wisdom that I respect,
All
along
right.
with a lot of the other examples of women that we talked about. When you look at them, they handled situations differently, right? They
Yeah.
were transformational. They were inspiring. They led with transparency and integrity, and they built trust in those around them, right? So if your strength is not in being able to pick up the heaviest rock, look at what your strengths are and lead with that. And don't
Exactly.
be afraid to ask for help, to delegate, and to be ready to make those decisions and to be wrong sometimes, right? Every leader is wrong sometimes. And most leaders are wrong multiple times per day. And the question is, how quickly do you adapt and correct? And do you learn from those experiences? And realizing that when you are leading, right, and you're doing it with a good heart, people understand that. You do have to be effective. So you have to learn and to be observant to the situation.
Absolutely, that is correct. And there's one thing that I would need to add, that we need to negotiate with confidence as well. If we are working in some at some workplace, we need to negotiate with a confidence. Don't hesitate to advocate for yourself in terms of salary, promotions, and opportunities. That is something we lack at. I lack at. So this is that we spoke about leadership styles, and I resonate with transformational leadership. I believe that inspiring and empowering your team can lead to incredible results, and that is quite true. Now we are moving to the next part, that is what impact does female leadership have on organizational culture?
Okay. Where to start? Goodness, can you imagine life without women in it, right?
Yeah.
Guys, so there's jokes, right? I was unfortunately I'm gonna share a joke. No, I'm not gonna share this joke. Moving on. The uh we men will often joke about the challenges of having women in the work environment, right?
Yes.
But female leadership often brings in more inclusive and empathetic approaches to organizational culture and life. Studies have shown that organizations with diverse leadership teams are often more innovative, perform better financially, and
Mhm.
have more stability for for the people that work for them, right? So, and this is more than just their employees, but it can all go into their supply chain, into the
Exactly.
community around them, right? Which is something I often consider in my business practices is how does what I'm doing improve my community? Women way better at this than I am. And I don't understand why a woman could ever be better than me at something, but apparently God made it in that way. So the uh, it's just the appreciating the ethical decision making and the balance that women bring into the leadership roles and creating and fostering healthy environments. It's significant and shouldn't be overlooked.
And that is absolutely correct. Philip, now we're gonna move on to the next question, that is about organizations. How can organizations create more inclusive work environment to support female leaders?
Okay, great. So organizations can start iteratively making inclusive environments for women by implementing policies that promote diversity and inclusion. And I
Right.
don't mean do this in a fake way, right? I
Okay.
really would like to start by bringing women into your planning, into
Mhm.
your executive meetings, and getting feedback early on, right? So it's a lot about having good culture, right? And integrating, if you're a largely man or fully man board, um, or leadership branch or C staff, right? Then I don't know if I would say you got to have women as part of those ranks, but I definitely want to have women that are comfortable talking honestly and openly about how to improve, how to do business, if it makes sense to get their opinion on it. And just
Absolutely.
like, yeah, and just like I don't totally take the advice of
Mhm.
any of my employees, I do take into consideration.
Yeah,
And having these, bringing these in, these kind of diverse opinions in as early as possible, help make the next steps easier. So
right.
don't what I don't like to see, and I don't think anybody likes to see this, is like an airline saying, "I'm going to bring in diversity. I don't care if they're qualified." Right? Nobody wants a pilot that's not qualified, but brought in just because they meet a diversity quota.
Exactly.
That wouldn't make sense. But start integrating this diversity in ways where you're communicating, you're listening, right? You're open to change, and you have to be super considerate when you're doing this, because in the beginning, the women that you might be bringing in may not be in a power position that allows them to be open about this. And you want to be extremely considerate of that,
Mhm.
because anytime for anybody, when you shut down a voice and when you shut down talent and diversity too early, right, that you lose out. And this too early is probably a controversial statement, but there is times to throttle diversity. There is times to throttle creativity, but
Exactly.
I find it's much more rare that you should be throttling it versus you should be um, empowering it and embracing it.
All right, that has been taken, and that inclusivity should be a core value of every organization, and that does make us feel safe and uh, more better. It's about creating a space where everyone feels valued and empowered to contribute. Moving on to our next question, that is looking ahead, what are some future trends and predictions for women in leadership? What's your take on that and how do you see it?
Okay. Um, I hope and I expect, especially with remote work opening up and the ability to work remotely, I fully expect
Mhm.
and hope to see more women stepping into leadership roles, to
All right.
stepping into presenting the value and their experiences in ways that wasn't organic before, and to start to eat. There's a lot of organic growth in this direction, right? But I expect this to accelerate, especially where we're going into a time of AI, right? And we're getting information quickly. We need to be able to quickly evaluate the information we're provided and to look at that.
Mhm.
And one of the next things that the next challenges with the AI revolution is going to see how is this information and these tools that we have useful? How do they become integrated, right? And as we're integrating that, we want to make sure that we are integrating women and diversity into this process, because now we're going to have to learn how to make choices quickly, how to get feedback quickly, and this is going to become a trend that accelerates over time. It's not going to decelerate. So I want to just everybody to think about this kind of warning, that in information and
Yeah.
in mental talent, we are on the same level. Women and men are really at the same level in many ways, but we have different talents and different strengths. So don't be one-sided. Take advantage of that. Make those cooperative uh, possibilities so that you can take those choices more accurately quicker. It's going to be a real hard thing to do. Particularly, we can expect to see this in startups where there's going to be, and I found this year, 2023, last year, right? There was a massive uptick in female initiated entrepreneurship. And this was an exciting trend for me. I hope it continues. I've seen it continue in 2024. We're still early in the year, in my opinion, right? But it's going to be a trend. So women, keep it up, ladies. Men, embrace it, right? Look at how you can work with your female counterparts and value them. And women also listen to the guys around you and understand that they're trying to read between the lines and they're not good at it.
Yeah, exactly. That is how it works. That is how it works at a workplace as well. And we are gonna have some questions from our audience as well. And the first one is, what strategies can women use to build strong professional network?
Did you say networks or net worth?
Network.
Networks. Okay, cool. So for women to build strong networks, I recommend that you go and find masterminds based off from other women.
Right.
Another thing that you want to do is look at coaching, right? Highly consider one-on-one coaching or group coaching. And this can be from men or women, but you want to develop your communication strengths and you want to develop your professional path to be inclusive to multiple approaches, right? So have men in your mentorship and coaching lineup so that you can get practice in communicating with them and negotiating, right? Get a negotiating coach. Read the book Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss, right? And he talks, it's a great book. He talks about tactical empathy, right? It's a great read, and it's going to help you understand how to communicate and how to mirror, how to kind of process what people are thinking, saying, right? What they really mean. It's important for both men and women, right? But also for women, you have to develop those female support groups, and that means for me, masterminds, specifically maybe life coaches, right? You can get a life coach from so mentorship should be 1 or 2 or 3 steps ahead of where you're at. Life coaches, they can be way ahead of you, right? They can be like grandmas that look back and have run, like, I wish I could get Margaret Thatcher, that's a life coach, right? Can you imagine? But women, seriously, go after these, right? A lot of women consider it a mission of theirs to help support their kind, right? Not that I call women kind, but you know what I mean.
All right, so there is another question from our audience, that is, what are emerging trends? Okay, that you have already answered in one of our segment. What are the emerging trends in female leadership globally?
Good question. The so even in Muslim countries, right, there is a openness towards women's roles in leaderships and family that I think is really productive, right? So I think women feel like they have to be perfect at things, right? They feel like they really have to be way better than men.
Pressure on ourselves.
Yeah. You know, my wife, I don't have any daughters, unfortunately. I have to wait for my sons to marry before I have any daughters. My wife told me the shop is closed, so I can't try anymore, right? But so I'm going to have to wait. I'm looking forward to this, but I don't have this experience, right? So look at how you can find these kind of open-minded people like myself, right, that are passionate for community and for the women around them and for the children and for the mothers, and just say, hey, where can I go next? What would you like to see from me? Where do you think I can progress? Right? And there's going to be men out there that want to help you out and to get you through that, but you may have to talk to like 10 or 20 of them before you find a mature enough guy to do it. But start off by being considerate of how to approach them. Right? I am generally very hard to approach. Right? Uh, I am super hard to approach, right?
All right.
It's very hard to get to me. There's ways to do so, right?
Yeah.
But it tends to be through those around me, right? And the worst thing that you could do is to try to push around those to get to me, right? If you don't come through those chains of people in my community, in my network, in my immediate vicinity, those I use to protect me from problems, right? You won't get to me. And is the women, this is going to be the same problem you run into. So don't neglect those that are around me that I rely on, because if you appreciate them, there's a better chance I'll appreciate you. But look at who I'm putting my trust in, and imagine why. Right? Look at what value they provide and realize I probably enabled them to have all the resources that they need to help support the community and to help grow missions. So look for those guys and ladies out there that are looking to build the community, to make things better, and follow the path that they give. If you do get a hold of me directly, right? So I may say, talk to Mark, or talk to Stephanie, or talk to Rahima, right? And if I say that and you come back to me, right back to me, say I don't want to deal with them, I'm like, you're just blocked. So be considerate of that and appreciate the whole value chain that you're trying to incorporate.
Yeah, definitely. And as we wrap up, Philip, what are your final thoughts, and what would you like to share with our audience, whatever your final thoughts are?
Okay. So I want to emphasize that leadership to me is more than just titles or positions, right? It's really about making a difference, about others. And women have the incredible ability and innate talent to lead, to create positive change, to create in the first place. And to all women aspiring to leadership positions, believe in yourself, seek out opportunities, never stop learning. Don't be afraid that you're not perfect enough. Believe me, you are more than sufficient. Go out there, be brave. Know that there's a lot of men and other women cheering for you, and it's really your responsibility, and God made you to be amazing.
That was beautiful. And celebrate your achievements regardless of your gender. Acknowledge and celebrate your success, no matter how small that is. That is going to motivate you. And thank you so much, Philip, for joining us for today's session. And thank you to the audience for joining us today. Let's continue to support and celebrate women in leadership and keep pushing forward, and together we'll make a difference. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone.